Good evening. I'd like to call the August 13, 2019 Planning Commission meeting to order. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we take roll call, I did want to take a moment to welcome our newest planning commissioner to her first meeting, official meeting, Margaret Williams. Thank you. Welcome. Happy to be here. Great. Okay, we can proceed with roll call, please.
Commissioner John Ebnetter.
Present.
Commissioner Ramiro Maldonado.
Present.
Commissioner Margaret Williams.
Present.
Vice Chair Ellen Mallory.
Present.
Chair Mike Etheridge.
Present. Okay, item 1 on the consent calendar are the meeting minutes from the July 23rd meeting, and there was a revised version with changes in red that was on everybody's chair. Does anybody have any comments or feedback on these revised minutes?
Through the chair. So underneath the changes on page 2, there's a statement that one commissioner expressed concern that there had not been enough information provided yet to decide on the study areas. And I was that one commissioner. And I think that, I know that my stance was that the City Council's robust outreach criteria has not been met as it pertains to this study. And that's why I had concerns of the council using this information. So I think it's reflected elsewhere, but I just wanted to make sure that that's how I had stated my position on it.
So you're just clarifying for the record, but you're good with how it's worded here on the minutes? Okay. Did anybody else have any comments or edits? No. Okay. Could we have a motion for approval?
I motion to approve the July 23rd revised minutes.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay. And I believe Ms. Williams is abstained from the vote. Okay,
Yes.
so 4-0 passes with 1 abstention. Okay. Next item on the consent calendar is for public comment. If any members of the audience have any items to talk about that is not regarding the 1218 Monte Diablo study session matter.
And I have no speaker slips.
Okay, anybody in the audience want to talk? Okay, so we'll close public comment and we'll move right to item 2 of the consent calendar study session.
Good evening, Chair Etheridge and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Wendy Lau, Associate Planner and Staff Planner for Pre-Application PA 19008. Before I begin my presentation, I wanted to direct you to 2 additional correspondence that staff received after the packet was distributed. Copies have been distributed to you at the dais. The project before you tonight is for the redevelopment of 4 privately owned parcels into 35 townhome units. The project site is located at what is currently 1218 Monte Diablo Avenue and 131, 139, and 145 North Kingston Street. The proposal consists of the redevelopment of the 4 sites into 35 townhomes. The project proposes 6 3-bedroom units and 29 4-bedroom units. Of the 35 units, 4 will be below market rate units. The units would range from 3 stories tall towards the front and sides of the property to 4 stories tall towards the rear of the property. The building height will range from 33 feet 2 inches tall to 43 feet, 8 inches tall. This is within the allowable height limit of 45 feet. The units would range from 1,814 square feet to 2,453 square feet, resulting in a total of 80,526 gross square feet. This is within the allowable gross floor area of 80,640 square feet, or a floor area ratio of 1.5. Each unit would have 2 to 3 parking spaces inside the garage through a combination of side-by-side, tandem, regular, and compact parking spaces. The project proposes 83 residential parking spaces and 2 visitor parking spaces for a total of 85 off-street parking spaces. The project site is located in the R4 zoning district, where high-density residential units are allowed. As you can see on the screen, the project sites are located at the southwest corner of Monte Diablo Avenue and North Kingston Street, and are identified by the 4 arrows. The 4 sites total 53,737 square feet, which is equivalent to 1.23 acre. The project site is currently occupied by a marketplace and 8 residential units. The project site is located adjacent to a 3-story apartment complex across Monte Diablo Avenue to the northwest, a 2-story motel with a 3-story parking garage to the southwest, 2-story residences to the southeast, and predominantly 1-story single-family residences across North Kingston Street to the northeast. This project is subject to the Housing Accountability Act. Because the project proposes 10% lower income for sale units, the project does qualify for the state density bonus. The project site is allowed a density of 50 dwelling units per acre, which is equivalent to 62 units for this 1.23 acre site. With the allowable 35% density bonus, the project site is actually allowed to have a density of up to 68 dwelling units per acre, which is equivalent to 84 units on this project site. However, the applicant proposes a density of only 28 dwelling units per acre, or 35 units for this 1.23 acre site. This is approximately 42% of the allowable density. Again, 4 of the units will be below market rate units at the lower income level, which is 80% of the area median income. The applicant is requesting 3 waivers from development standards regarding setbacks, change of roof height, and building transitions. The first waiver is to encroach into the required setback areas. The zoning code requires an interior side yard setback of 15 feet, and the project proposes to only provide an interior side yard setback of 12, so would encroach into the setbacks by 3 feet. The zoning code requires a street side yard setback of 19 feet 9 inches in this portion of the street side yard, and the project proposes to only provide a street side yard of 8 feet 3 inches, so would encroach into the setback by 11 feet 6 inches. The zoning code requires a rear yard setback of 19 feet 6 inches in this portion of the rear yard, and the project proposes to only provide a rear yard setback of 9 feet, so would encroach into the setback by 4 feet 6 inches. Please note, the ground floor porches, as illustrated in the green, would encroach even further into the setbacks and would provide varying buffers ranging from 5 feet 7 inches on the side to 9 feet at the rear. The second waiver requested by the applicant is to change the roof height by 1 foot instead of 2 feet. The multifamily design guideline requires a change in roof height of at least 2 feet for every building section to allow for more variation and to help reduce the appearance of a large mass. Instead, the applicant proposes to only change the roof height by 1 foot. The third waiver requested by the applicant concerns building transitions. The multifamily design guideline limits the change in building height to 1 story from adjacent lower structures, or if changes in building height are even greater, then the upper floors are to be stepped back. As you can see on this image, the orange color represents 3-story buildings, and many are located adjacent to 1-story single-family homes across the street. The blue color represents 4-story buildings, and many are located adjacent to the 2-story motel to the south. Although the project proposes ground floor porches which project from the building and provide some articulation, the applicant instead proposes to not step back the upper floors and would be taller than some neighboring structures by 2 stories. The applicant held a neighborhood meeting on July 22nd at the Holiday Inn Hotel, in which approximately 42 people attended. The main concerns raised at the meeting included cut-through traffic and neighborhood traffic, parking congestion, and truck routes, noise, and construction timeline. The meeting summary, including the list of issues raised during the neighborhood meeting, can be reviewed on Attachment 6. Staff would like the Commission to address the following issues tonight regarding building mass and scale, building design, and traffic improvement measures. The first discussion topic is building mass and scale, including the absence of stepping back the upper stories. As noted earlier, the design guidelines call to limit building height transition to 1 story, or to at least step back the upper stories when located adjacent to lower buildings. The second discussion topic is the building design. Staff is requesting the Plan Commission to discuss the overall architectural style and design approach, including the siding materials at the corner unit. As noted in the staff report, staff recommends an alternative material, such as shingles or wooden panels, to replace the stucco siding and better complement the residential neighborhood character. The third discussion topic is parking, traffic, and vehicular speed, including traffic improvement measures. Many members of the public expressed concerns about both on-street and off-street parking spaces, tandem parking, visitor parking, and the potential for stop signs or speed bumps. Staff received 6 public comment letters regarding this project. A couple commended the project and several expressed various concerns. Multiple letters expressed concern about the loss of the existing market. This project is zoned R4, which allows for residential, but does not allow for new grocery stores. The current marketplace is considered legal nonconforming as is. Staff also received multiple letters expressing concerns about the increase in traffic. A traffic study will be prepared for the formal application. There were multiple comments regarding the number of parking spaces. This project is in compliance with the parking requirements using the state parking standards, which requires 2 spaces for each 3-bedroom unit and 2.5 spaces for each 4-bedroom unit. In addition, as mentioned earlier, the project is also well below the maximum allowable density. There were some letters regarding construction noise. The project will be in compliance with the city's construction hours, which are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Fridays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays. This will also be a permit condition of approval. There were also some questions about the impact to local schools. The project will pay a school impact fee, and this is also a matter the city will study further during the formal application stage. Lastly, there was also a question about the proposed sidewalk. The project proposes a sidewalk with a minimum 5 foot through zone along Monte Diablo Avenue and North Kingston Street. Additional comments can be found in Attachment 9. Staff wanted to quickly explain the next steps of this project. After tonight's meeting, the applicant will revise the plans based upon the Plan Commission and public comment feedback. Afterwards, the applicant will submit a formal application. The formal application will include an environmental review, which contains technical reports such as traffic studies and a historic report. A shadow study will also be prepared. Finally, when the project is ready, the project will be brought to the Plan Commission for a public hearing for a decision. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions the Commission may have. The applicant is also here tonight to present their project and answer questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have questions for staff before the applicant presentation, or would you like to wait until after? Okay. Oh, can we proceed with the applicant presentation, please?
Evening, Commissioners. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for a great presentation. You stole my good images, though. Cat's out of the bag. All right, so here tonight, my name is Travis Duncan. I'm from Regis Homes, Bay Area. I've also got with me Jeff Smith from our office and Jim Yee from VTBS Architecture. So any questions we'll be able to handle, we hope. And if not, we got a lot of professionals up here that can help us out. So today, I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Wendy said. It seems like not a good use of you guys' time. We're going to leave as much time as possible for you guys' feedback. That's really what we're here tonight. And we'll be around clearly to answer any questions along the way. Just a little bit about us, Ceres Regis, Regis Homes. We're local developers. We're based in San Mateo. Been here for 25, 30 years. We really pride ourselves in being transit-oriented developers, building the right way, high-quality materials, good architecture, bringing homes to the Bay Area is really what we do, sustainably with high-quality design. We've done a couple of projects in San Mateo. Two examples here, one 888 San Mateo, recently completed, very high quality, very well received, both by the public and the market. Humboldt Square is a little bit older vintage, but right off 3rd, kind of a gateway to San Mateo. Again, we think a very high quality project and very well received by the city. A little bit about the project, just as a slightly larger context. It's hard to see on that screen. I'm hoping it's a little clearer for you guys, but in purple in the middle is where the site is. The purple line running page north-south is Monte Diablo Avenue. We're located in the North Shore View area and close to that Montessori school, which we've had a lot of conversations, good conversations with staff about. It also came up during the community meeting. Two things I want to point out that came up in the community meeting as well are the two markets that are just around the corner from us. One is over the pedestrian overpass, which we see as an amenity to our residents. That's the La Hacienda market. And then Prima's market is just slightly south, which is to the right on the page here, Prima's market. So we've heard from the community about Fred's, understand that there's some sensitivity there. There are two quality markets right around the corner to serve that neighborhood. A little bit more detail on sort of what's on the ground today. These are fairly outdated buildings that are reaching the end of their useful life. I want to draw your attention specifically to that open lot on the kind of the page south side here. There have been some issues with that lot in the past, combined with the pedestrian overpass right there. That's not an ideal situation of uses. We see this as a real opportunity to restore vitality to this area. Not that the neighborhoods need it, but to this lot in particular. The market I discussed is on the corner, and there's a couple of existing residential units that we will be replacing. So to me, when I look at this, I really focus on sort of restoring life to that open lot and to the rear. Just to give you an idea of the existing condition today, I mentioned in passing, but you can see the pedestrian overpass on the right-hand side. The market here, building something like 40, 50 years old, can just see to the left-hand side the residential units. Other things to take note of here, not a lot of greenery on this corner. This is a T intersection with an apartment building to the right. You see one tree about 3/4 of the way down the block, but really no greenery. It's something we think we can really improve. And from there, I will advance the next slide. Wendy mentioned it, but in passing, this is zoned for residential, high-density residential, R4, allows for 84 units. We are not providing 84 units. We think it'd be challenging to be compatible with the neighborhood, so we've really reduced the density down to someplace we think is really compatible. And by providing those affordable units, we are asking for some setback relief, which we need in order to provide the number of units we are providing. I can go into more details if that's of interest to you all. It was mentioned in passing, but this site is actually identified for housing in the housing element, site number 10. Made the top 10 list, as we like to say in the office, which we think is fantastic. We're excited to sort of follow the lead of the city in identifying this site and really providing residential here. One of the issues that came up along the way was about curb cuts and really trying to minimize those. Right now, there's a number of driveways along Monte Diablo and Kingston. By the site plan we have, there's only 2, which reduces conflicts with pedestrians and specifically school children walking to school. So by reducing the number of curb cuts, we're actually, we think, making it safer urban walkability for kids, hopefully walking to school. And then Wendy mentioned it, but the market is a non-conforming use, and we understand the sensitivities around losing that neighborhood market. We hope the ones around the corner are sufficient. Most of these were hit on by Wendy, but just a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. These are for sale townhomes. The area needs housing for sure. We love to build for sale housing. It's an opportunity for people to really invest in their communities. We're making an investment in the neighborhood, and those people who move in and buy the townhomes will reinvest in their community for years to come. We love doing that. Wendy mentioned it's a mix in 3 and 4 bedrooms, which is perfect for young families. There's a children's play area on the backside, which we think is a fantastic amenity for those hopeful young families. 58 additional trees is the other thing I want to draw attention to on this slide. You'll see in the imagery coming up that we think this is a dramatic improvement of both the Monte Diablo and Kingston corridor from just a green and urban lifestyle perspective. Here's a first level site plan, really focusing on landscape. Notice all the trees on the front, a lot of greenery, and then that children's play area on the backside. All of those units are facing the children's play area, so this idea of having eyes on where the kids are playing is really important to us, making sure it's a safe and secure environment. That's overview. Wendy stole my picture, but that's okay. It still looks good, I think. A lot of street trees here, a lot of greenery. We think these homes are absolutely compatible with the neighborhood character. We can talk about setbacks, but these are traditional architecture. The porches we think are incredibly important for reducing that scale. I think Jim has done an incredibly good job of taking a tight site and really presenting something that's really attractive. I'm going to advance. One comment that came up from Wendy, I think, Wendy, I just want to make sure I understand your comment. This is the corner you're asking them to focus on, if that was not clear. You guys can't see what I'm focusing on, but this is the corner. She's talking about focusing on materials. We agree with the concept. This is a corner to focus on. It's the most important one on the site. Would love you guys' feedback on what we can do there. Yeah. I'll go to some elevations. These are really here for reference more than anything else, but roof variation we should discuss as a group. The porches to us really draw down the scale and make this very approachable. These are 3-story townhome units, but very easy to imagine living here. The rest of the elevations I'm including just in case we need to reference them later. You see a little bit more roof variation from the side. This is the long elevation along Kingston. You see we've broken up the mass of those buildings by providing the trellis or pergola on the left-hand side and then separating the two buildings rather than having the continuous flow. Back to the rendering, again, to me, perfect for young families. One thing I didn't mention, but we're hiding all of the garages. So you see no curb cuts on the street. These are all front porches. The driveways are tucked around, which we see as a huge benefit. I wanted to give a little bit more color on the community meeting. We've done a fair amount of outreach independent of that as well. As Wendy mentioned, our kind of top hit list is very similar: parking, traffic safety, and the market. Taking them one at a time. Parking on the public streets was a big concern from the meeting. I got a diagram after this showing sort of we do actually increase the number of stalls available on the street because of that reduction in curb cuts. We have 2 to 3 stalls per home, which is quite generous. The traffic comment from the community is valid. We all are dealing with that every day. The concern from the community, as we heard, it was really about cut-through traffic, and particularly the speed on Bayshore and on Monte Diablo coming down Kingston. We'd love to work together with Public Works and others to find a way to help that. It seemed like the community sentiment was really focused on sort of the regional issues and less about the project. So as much as possible to kind of bifurcate those, we'd love to have a conversation. I mentioned safety and security. The vacant lot combined with the overpass is just not an ideal recipe. We think adding a bunch of families and people to these homes enlivens that back lot and really makes it safer. And then finally, the market I mentioned at the beginning, but 2 other markets around the corner. A little bit more detail on parking. Wendy said 85 spots provided on site, 2.4 per home. Guest parking is provided on site, plus we're increasing the number of stalls, which I outlined here. 13 stalls available, public stalls, not for our private residents, but just for anyone out there today. We are able to increase that by 17 by reducing all those curb cuts. One of the things we heard at the community meeting was a lot of people park in their driveways and their cars overhang the sidewalk, which makes you have to kind of walk into the street to get around the people's cars. I'm sure you guys can imagine this. I find myself doing it all the time. By eliminating any residential driveways, it's impossible to imagine a car parking in one of these and creating a conflict with pedestrians, which again, thank you, Karen and Wendy, for pushing us to go in this direction. We think this actually it took us a while to get over the hump, but you guys were right. Having fewer curb cuts was the right thing to do. So this yields 4 more spots with fewer conflicts. Traffic I mentioned, really about cut-through traffic and speed. I'm going to show you a graph in just a second about the trips that we have done on our own independent. As you guys know, the city will run its own independent traffic evaluation. And as much as we'd like to help the process in the right-of-way that the city controls, which is what the community is asking for, they're asking specifically for things like stop signs and speed bumps and lower speed limits. We'd like to help that process, but clearly the city needs to lead that. 2 graphs, and I will not wade deep into the numbers here. We certainly can if you will, but I'll remind you that the city will do an independent evaluation of traffic as part of the formal application. This is prelim analysis done by us to show that if You replace what is on site today, including a convenience store, light industrial, and some residential, and replace it with residential townhomes. You see a big reduction in traffic. A lot of that reduction in traffic is because convenience stores generate a lot of trips. We heard some feedback during the community meeting that, hey, that doesn't really feel quite right. There's no way you could come up with that kind of reduction. We took that feedback. We ran a separate analysis that compared just, imagine that everything there is light industrial, the market and the other industrial, and the residential units remain the same. Compare that with the residential we're planning to doing. We see a very, very, very nominal increase in traffic, none in the AM, and 5 trips in the peak hour. To put these in context, the ones before were negative 200. This is +5. +5 is effectively negligible from a traffic perspective. Wendy mentioned streetscape improvements. Here's an idea of what that looks like. On the left, what's there today. On the right, where we're hoping to go. We think that's a significant improvement. Certainly, we'd love to do more. This is a very tight site with the drive aisle widths we need and kind of standard depths of units. We can't go much wider. We can have a discussion about that, but it's challenging. And we are able to dramatically improve the furnishing zone, so bike racks, benches, that sort of things in that area. As I'm wrapping up here, just an idea of sort of the greenery. There's 4 trees on site today, 58 additional for 63 total. I might have done bad math there. Forgive me. Maybe out by 1. New trees, including that children's player on the backside. I think I am biased, but I think this is objective. This is superior from a landscaping perspective. And with that, ooh, look at that fancy animation. We're ready and willing to answer all questions you guys might have. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Do my fellow commissioners want to ask questions from staff and applicant at this time or after public comment? Okay. Let's move directly then into public comment. And then after that, we will have questions for both the staff and applicant, and then final comments.
So I have 1 speaker slip, Mary Lou.
Good evening. I'm Mary Lou Dragon Rider. I live off Huron, so not far from this. My question is, we have just recently come out of a drought. What is this going to do to water in the city? Do we have enough water? With all the building that's going on, is there enough water? Will there be enough water, especially if we go into another drought? Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other public speakers on the Monte Diablo project? I see 1. If anybody else would like to speak, you're welcome to speak and then fill out the slip afterwards.
Mr. Charlie Dressler.
I can speak a couple times if you want. We'll keep it to 1. All right. Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight about this wonderful proposed project. I say wonderful because I think it's a great addition to the neighborhood. I think the land, especially facing the freeway, is totally underutilized, and that's pretty much along most of our neighborhood in North Shoreview. Unfortunately, the city doesn't find it necessary to pay as much attention to our little neighborhood until Parks and Rec got a nice little award in front of City Council. I think we had a dilapidated rusty fence along the golf course for nearly 18 months. It was, so this would be a nice addition. I think the Pulte Homes project was a great addition. It was well thought out. It was thoroughly chewed on by the community. And I know there's some issues. No project is perfect. I personally would like to see this one at higher density. I'm not sure who's going to live in 4-bedroom units, but I would love to see more 2- and 3-bedrooms. I think that's what this community needs if we're going to be sustainable in the future. A recent council meeting, Councilmember Bonilla corrected me when I said I was worried about the next generation or 2, and he said I'm worried about the one right in front of us. And the reality is there are cities near us that are closing schools, It is simply too expensive to live here, period. I think this site is overparked, and I think it's a hard pill to swallow when we say we need parking because we don't want the overspill onto the streets. I'd like to know if these parking spaces are bundled or if they're unbundled. And for sites that don't need them, make them available to the units that need more at a premium. Don't just give them away. But you know, it's within our purview to consider as a neighborhood parking permit programs. That program's been in place for a while via the Public Works Commission. And I think that's a useful alternative. This clock never started, so you're gonna have to tell me when to stop. I will try to wrap it up in a minute because I think that's reasonable. And I am genuinely impressed with the colors, the materials. Yes, I'd like to see a higher quality. I don't like to see stucco or, you know, I mean, I don't expect this thing to be full of glazing, but what I'm looking at, that's a real nice addition to my neighborhood. You know, I was told 21 years ago that this is a blue-collar starter neighborhood. Well, I'm pretty proud of my blue-collar starter neighborhood because I've quadrupled my investment plus some, and I don't plan to go anywhere. So I hope you're on this commission for a long time. I plan to come back. That said, I think it's really important that the developer and the neighborhood continue to work around the issues of traffic shortcutting through our neighborhood. I know our neighborhood association has had meetings and has had a very effective committee work on that. I don't like the Peninsula Overpass sign that says no turn on red, period. That's it. Not just, you know, like 4 to 6 or commute hours. It's just no turn on red. And that's a real pain in the arse for those of us that are always coming there at, you know, odd hours, moving kids and family and not just commuting through our neighborhood like the Foster City shortcut to 92. So I think some of that signage was a reaction to the Burlingame development. But I would love to see us work on that pedestrian overpass. It is still not a very inviting or friendly place to be. I would encourage everyone in this room and on this commission to walk that overpass and bring a handkerchief because you're going to want to blow your nose after you make it across. It's not friendly. Children use that overpass every day to go to San Mateo High School. They deserve to be safe. And I know PD works on it. I think we can do more. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Oh, did we have one? Okay, wait, hold on. That's like a reverse hammer.
I wasn't going to say anything. I haven't filled it out.
You can fill that out after.
Okay, afterwards.
Push, announce your voice, your name.
Push what?
Announce your name.
Oh, hi everybody. I'm Diane and I live in the North Shoreview, Kingston area. And I wasn't going to speak, but I was inclined to. Just a couple of things resonated with me that other people have mentioned. In regards to the project itself, I'm neither for or against it at this time. I'm still gathering information. But there were some things mentioned that inclined me to speak. There was a statement about, and I actually was at the community meeting and talked with some neighbors afterwards. And I think the sense that we got was when it came to the grocery store, I don't necessarily feel that a lot of us were like, oh, we'd hate to see it go because, you know, out of convenience. I think a lot of it is some of us feel forgotten in our neighborhood. Like San Mateo's getting bigger, more construction. I think that feeling of, I don't know, we just feel a little bit forgotten, you know, and I would say, you know, that I guess the sentimental value, but it's like other things that are changing. Somebody mentioned the overpass. Yes, it's terrible. I had to walk across that by myself at night a couple of times and I ran through there. I will say there was a concern at the community meeting about traffic because a lot of the people that have children in the area can't take their kids to the local school. A lot of them are getting sent to other places, being bused to other places in San Mateo. So that was a concern because there's no control over that. Yes, people are gonna move in, but there's no assurance that they're going to go to a local neighborhood school. They might be going across San Mateo for that. there was a mention about construction noise and how that would be mitigated. As somebody that, we were close to the Pulte project that just ended, there was a lot of construction, but I will say that there was many times when those hours were not honored. There was construction outside, so I'd be appreciative if the city, if this gets approved, that the city provide more oversight. I know you all can't be there 24/7, but more oversight would be appreciated because there was times at 7 in the morning or even earlier. Every morning start a little earlier. So just something to keep in mind. And I appreciate the greenery. I think that's an interesting addition, but I also ask, what else is gonna be done for the neighborhood? That's great for that section, but let's not forget about our neighborhood, the rest of it, that could really use a little bit more upkeep and, just to not forget about the rest of us that are not that close to the site. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we will close the public comment for real. Okay. Now we can start with any questions that the commissioners have for either staff or the applicant. Ramiro, can we start with you and we'll come down this way?
For the applicant, out of the 10% for affordable housing, would those be 3 or 4 bedroom apartments or homes?
It'll be a mix. So the breakdown is something like 29 4-bedroom and 6 3-bedroom. So based on that breakdown, it's probably 2 4-bedroom and 1 3-bedroom.
Okay.
It usually matches the unit mix.
Okay. Was there a reasoning why, being that it's a residential area and there's a lot of people that walk, sorry, you can get up, yeah, sorry. Individuals that walk in that neighborhood that use the bridge to go and from school and things like that, that the design was to reduce the sidewalk what it currently is now to 5 feet, rather than keeping it at what it is currently now.
Yeah, it's a good question. The sidewalk now is all sidewalk, no greenery, which I believe does not meet current standards in terms of when you come back and redevelop. It may be a good question for us to consider with Public Works
Okay.
and their sort of professional opinion.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Abner.
Sure. Can you tell me why you are at such a low development unit per acre? What is driving that?
Yeah, so when we started this process, you acquire the sites and then you sort of see what do we think we can do with it. Obviously, we look at zoning and the zoning is higher, which I think is what you're alluding to. We were less certain of our ability to deliver a product that was fitting with the neighborhood at the kind of densities that are allowed. We think this townhome product is perfect for this neighborhood and really perfect for this site. Doing the townhome product requires certain depths. The roads have to be certain widths. We've maximized the number of townhome style units we can provide. I'd love to be able to provide more. I can't fit them. And it really comes down to site geometry.
So what is the maximum height for this parcel?
I can answer that question. The maximum height for this parcel is 45 feet.
45 feet, okay. So this project, I do like it. I do have some questions, though. It seems like we're building a lot of 2, 3, and 4-story townhomes or apartments, which I find contradictory to where the market is going, where people are looking for one-level units. And I've been told by other applicants that the one level doesn't work in their portfolios. And I'm curious why. And the reason I'm saying is that with the demographics changing to the elderly side, these homes to me are going to become less valuable as time goes on rather than more valuable. So have you any thoughts on that as in your industry?
It's a big question. I think the only way we could do single level at this location would be to do what's called kind of stacked flats. You can imagine like a box on top of a box on top of a box. The biggest issue with those kind of stacked flats or condos really comes down to liability in California. It's very challenging to build them effectively. All of those projects get sued by virtue of the way condo law works. We can go into a much deeper well there. I don't have much more knowledge, but Jeff can probably elucidate if you want to hear more about condos.
Oh, no, I mean, that answers some of it, yeah. I'd never heard that description, that they would change from a townhome to a condo, and I understand the insurance ramifications.
Yeah, and I think just to also kind of answer your question, we showed a project called 888, which is right there along the train tracks on the border with Burlingame. That was a perfect site for what you're describing, the stack flats, either rental or condominium, where you're closer to transit, closer to services. The question came up, 1 and 2 bedroom units versus these 3 and 4 bedroom units. It really comes down to location. And we did look at all those different product types and styles, and we've done, as you've seen in that portfolio, a number of projects of different densities. But really, when it came down to this site and what would fit on the site and what would really work economically and also would work for the end buyer, right? We've got to sell to a market who predominantly in this neighborhood is single family. So it's a nice step, as you've seen, as was referenced with the Pulte project, which is kind of a next step, which is that townhouse, kind of more of an entry level, a way to get into home ownership in this neighborhood.
Okay.
And if staff can also add, this project is in the flood zone, so the building code doesn't allow habitable space on the ground floor.
Correct, right. Feeding into the flood zone comment, and this would be more for the city than the applicant, I always find it somewhat unique where we cannot build livable spaces on the ground floor, yet we are locating high voltage transformers in flood areas. So, are there codes within the book to raise our transformers now, or are they still on grade level?
I believe the transformers and other similar electrical equipment also would not be allowed to be on the ground floor.
They are shown on the ground floor, on the exteriors of the building. So I'm just curious, because when a transformer gets wet, it blows up and doesn't work. So you've got, I'm just curious. I don't know if there's any requirements that the city currently has. We're protecting the building residents from flood by not letting them occupy the ground floor, but that we're leaving a very vulnerable key component exposed.
Oh, sure.
Because we built this same type scenario in Redwood City recently, and it all depends on what PG&E is going to require. But we're really talking about a foot in elevation. You're not talking about 10 feet.
Right.
And so that there are ways to build these pads to get that extra foot. We basically have to comply with PG&E and what they're going to require, and there is a way to do that in Redwood City at 333 Main Street called Township. We did exactly that. We built it up with 2 feet of fill and a pad that raises it a little higher.
Okay, great. A couple more questions, and I'll turn it over to my fellow commissioners. The project that I think was right down the street built, the townhouses, Puente or whatever it may be called, I do know that they do not have natural gas to their project. They have on-site local, or they had an on-site loader that I think or they're using for the vast majority of their power. And they also have driveways that are very permeable. And I see you don't have that much permeable spaces in yours. I was curious, one, will you be considering just going electric at this facility? Will you be maximizing your solar and getting more permeable surfaces on your driveways?
Yeah, we'll certainly study the permeable surface comment. We've actually gone back and forth during the pre-application process with staff, so we can continue to have that dialogue. Thank you for that. Solar, yes. And what was your first question?
The electrical. So what is happening now is the city of San Mateo is going through the process of getting reach codes in place for electrical only at some of the newer projects, not the multifamily residential yet. I think that's their next step. But some developers have voluntarily excluded natural gas from their projects for sustainability purposes. Just don't know if you guys are heading in that direction or not.
Yeah, that's certainly the direction the state is going. I think it will be an evaluation process along the way. We'll come back to you with an answer.
Great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to add to the utilities. The city's building code does require certain flood-proofing methods for utilities.
Commissioner Mallory?
Okay, gotta find all my questions. I just wanted to start off, there was some question on a letter that we got in about the curb style that was going to go around the project and whether or not it would be an arc or a hard line. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, in general, we're going to defer to Public Works on sort of curb style. Our preference is to go the kind of straight curb. There's no need for the rolled curb here, except at the corner where obviously it needs to come to grade. We'll defer, but
Okay,
we'd
I was
prefer.
just curious if you had any thoughts on that.
Yep.
And then I wondered how you were going to approach, since these are family dwellings, that there is not a neighborhood school in that area. So is that going to be something that you disclose in the sale documents, or how are you going to handle that?
It sounds like this has come up with the community meeting as well, the idea of local schooling or not. Certainly we'll comply with the current school district regulations, and if it needs to be disclosed to the buyers, it absolutely will be.
So it will be disclosed to those purchasing, so they know that ahead of time. Okay. And then I know you're still in a design phase, but I was curious how much each unit is going to be, just on a round scale, for a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom.
I wish I had a crystal ball, Commissioner Mallory. I'd love to be able to give you an answer. I just can't. It's going to take us a while to get through this design phase, hopefully, fingers crossed, approved, and then into permitting, and then into construction. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be a very, very good developer. Unfortunately, I don't. So I just can't tell you what they're going to sell for in 24 or 30 months. I'm sorry.
I think that's all I have at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Williams, any questions for staff or applicant?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I'll start with a question for staff. I think we talked about 3 areas that the applicant would like us to look at, which were setbacks, and the third one was materials at the corner unit in particular, or the corner area of the development. I can't remember what the second one was. There was another item, but we can come back to it if you want. But the question I have about setbacks is along Monte Diablo, and I think it's in the packet, but I can't recall exactly why. It varies on the side setback from 14'8" to 19'9", I think. Can you explain why the side setback varies again? The one along Monte Diablo, like it increases quite a bit, particularly for a side setback.
Sure. So along the Monte Diablo side, there's a different standard since this is the street side yard as opposed to the interior side yard here.
Mm-hmm.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I mean, well, not exactly. So normally, and I think there's a calculation involved, but I want confirmation of that, I guess. Normally, the setback would be the same all the way along the side, but in this case, it increases quite a bit, the required
Correct.
setback. And if we're asked to talk about why, it should be, they should be able to encroach on that setback, I guess I want to know why it increases.
Yes, that's right. So there is a jog along the side yard, and that's because in our zoning code, the side yard depends on whether or not it's adjacent to a 1 or 2 or 3-story building. So it depends on the adjacent building height. So that's why there's this jog in the side yard here.
And that's because it's adjacent to a building as opposed to the other, like the top part where the corner is. It's
Right.
not adjacent to anything. Okay.
So I believe on this side, it's adjacent to a 3-story apartment complex across the street.
Oh, I got
Whereas
it.
further up here, I think it's adjacent to a 1 or 2-story single-family home, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm familiar with that corner, so I think I remember what you're saying. Okay, and then I guess the other question, kind of on a related note, I guess to try to make some sense of the setbacks and possible encroachments, is the issue of the lanes, and this is more for the applicant. The lane, I see there's a fire truck turning radius involved and, some dimensions that vary from 26, well, mainly 26 for the main portion, but there is a side lane that is 22 feet. So I guess, is there any flexibility in those dimensions or those, again, there's a section at the kind of, it's not showing on this screen, but it's showing in my packet that it's narrower on the bottom right corner of the image here. That is only 22 feet wide, and I'm wondering what the requirement is. Is that 22 feet just meeting the requirement, or is there any play in that? And you don't have to, it's a question. Maybe it's a
Jim
question.
from VTBS may know the answer, so I'm going to bring him up.
Yes, Jim Yee with VTBS Architects. Anyway, the reason why it's 22 feet in that short section is all 3 stories there. Where you have the main long lane is 4 stories and 3 stories. And therefore, at that location, the fire department, I believe, requested 26 feet. And that's why you see the difference. And plus, the reason why we show that curvature there is to show that the fire engine can make that bend.
Mm-hmm. And then the other section right at the bottom right there is only 22 feet.
That's correct, and that's for 3 and 3.
Okay.
Commissioner Williams, can I just ask, are you hoping to see the lane or wondering about it getting narrower or getting wider?
I guess I'm just sort of studying this issue of encroaching into the setback.
Got it.
And if there's any, any places where you have exceeded the minimum requirement, which is always a nice thing, but if you've exceeded the minimum on that particular lane on the right, then maybe you have some room.
Jim didn't say it, but I think 26 feet is the minimum in this dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, we can verify, 22 feet is the minimum here. So I don't think we have any room to shrink there.
Okay. That's all I have for now on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so first question for staff. There were a couple of comments. I'll do questions of staff and then applicant afterwards. So there were a couple of comments on the both in the materials that were sent into us and then on the speakers that these new apartment condos complex that was recently built near has contributed to some challenges on that street. Is the city or the staff, have you looked into that, or do you agree with those comments, or is that something that there's awareness around?
Specifically relating to the traffic or?
The sentiment and the comments that it has gotten worse since that other adjacent development was open.
Well, at this point, we haven't looked into a traffic study yet. And so when the formal application comes in, we will be taking that into consideration. There will be certain studies, intersections that will be studied, which our traffic team will review prior to doing the study.
Okay. With regard to the materials, I wanted to get clarification on the discussion topics. Because this is this development is under the Housing Accountability Act, I wanted to be clear. So the applicant is requesting waivers on the setbacks, the building height, and the other elements. There was the code section in here, which I believe is pertinent. It said that you can only decline a waiver if there's a specific adverse impact upon health, safety, or the physical environment, which would have to be documented by one of the studies. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's a feature of the state density bonus law.
Okay.
And setbacks are part of that as well?
There's a separate section of the state density bonus law that says an applicant has the right to seek a waiver of a city development standard that would physically preclude construction of the proposed development. And so it has to be a standard related to the physical construction. And so setbacks do fall within that type of waiver. And then we have an attachment 8 regarding findings, and that includes the grounds on which the city could deny a requested waiver. And so one of those grounds is the one that Chairperson Etheridge mentioned, which is it would have a specific adverse impact on public health and safety. It would be contrary to state or federal law, or it would impact a property that is historically protected.
Okay, a couple questions for the applicant. This project stood out relative to some others that I've seen in that it has a mix of preponderance of 4-bedroom and some 3-bedroom units. I noticed that there are 2 visitor spots, which to me seemed unusual, given there's 85 total spots in the unit. Can you just talk about how that compares to other developments, or your thinking behind that decision to have 2 visitor spots?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So part of it is geometry, as City Attorney just mentioned. Setbacks the building requires certain setbacks in order to physically fit. It's a tight site, I think, as you see from the diagram. It's not like there's a lot of land area available for guest parking. That's the kind of truthful first pass answer. Mm-hmm. The second one is state density bonus also puts requirements on sort of the parking ratios that the development should provide. We're complying with those. 2 to 3 parking stalls for each of the individual units is a great start. Increasing the number of street parking stalls, we think, is another step in the right direction. I'd love to find a way to provide some additional guest parking stalls, and I think the best I can do right now is sort of say we're going to look at it as close as we can. I'm hearing it from you. We've heard it from the community. We understand it's an issue, and it's very sensitive, so we're going to study it in great detail as we move to the formal application.
With regard to it's hard for me to, I'm not familiar with dimensions, but in the unit plans, the garages are mentioned as they're just defined as standard stalls. Are these stall sizes that would comfortably accommodate the types of vehicles that families are with young children, which we're trying to sell these to, would accommodate, or are these like compact?
Yeah, again, great question. Every single home has a full-sized standard stall that would easily accommodate a lot of SUVs that are driven today. The second stall, where there are tandem stalls, every tandem, I'm looking at Jim because I want to make sure I don't say anything wrong, every tandem stall is full, aka standard. Where there are side-by-side stalls, those are compact.
There was one compact, but the side one was the compact.
Yeah, there's always one standard at minimum in every home.
Chairman, I think maybe the question you're sort of asking, those are stall sizes, but how do cars fit within those stall sizes? Typically, cars, other than big trucks, have actually been shrinking in sizes. Back in the 60s, cars were like 19 feet long. Typically, a bigger car nowadays is like 17 foot 6, believe it or not. The widths are generally about 6 to 6 foot 2. So basically, when you see a car stall, it's just to allow for room for the hood of the car and also for people to get out. So generally, within those dimensions, a typical car would fit within those spaces.
So it accommodates kind of modern
It really
car
does.
dimensions. Okay.
Yeah, and I think your compacts are 8. Cities are 7.5 in location, so that gives you a comparison.
Okay, thank you. When looking at, there was one of the slides that was just up was around it was sort of an overhead view of the project. And so you have 35 families now, or occupants of 4 and 3-bedroom units. Where's the contemplated area on this map where there's going to be, Amazon drop-offs for 35 units or, just other, contemporary delivery that I see up and down my family streets now all day, every day?
Again, a great question. There will be a mail box, like you would see. Doesn't answer your Amazon question, but that would be something separate. Sort of letters would come into a sort of looking for a combined or consolidated mailbox. Individual packages could be left at the front doors on the porches, or again, it's a little bit of a negotiation with the driver. Each of those individual drivers has different whims, but they could also be dropped off at sort of the rear on the apron. There's plenty of room in each of the individual home drive aprons.
Where would that be? Can we pull up the
site
map
plan,
real quick?
Wendy?
Just so I'm clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, I wonder if everyone else sees this on the screen. It's really tough. So porches, obviously somebody could drop it, they could tuck it in the back corner. We've seen, and this is getting a little bit off topic, but some of the technology companies are now offering people the ability to like ring a doorbell, see the delivery person, unlock the door, and kind of toss it in the unit or the home. That is becoming typical, actually. If neither of those feel right, this sort of private drive apron here has an overhang above it, so this would be protected from the elements. And kind of you can see each unit has a space right there where clearly somebody who was driving home would see their package as they were arriving home.
But I guess I was more curious about the units that are not facing North Kingston, the ones that are inside.
Yeah. So it would be likely on this, again, drive apron here, and depending on the whims of the driver, their porches here as well.
Okay.
Where are the mailboxes?
I'm a little bit hesitant to say because I'm not 100% certain, but here I go. I think there is the mailbox is located right there on that point. It's hard to see on this plan, but my recollection is that's where the mailboxes are. Hey, you got it right. Look at that.
No. Please. Yeah, please.
I think I'm going to jump in here. Having some sort of a locker or something, it doesn't have to be huge, but something where deliveries could be left and a key tucked somewhere or a combo provided, I think would be a real great addition to that. I think Mike has a good point on that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the suggestion.
With regard to your requested waiver on the change of roof heights, you request a 1 foot per section, not 2 feet per section. What is the reason for that waiver request?
Yeah, Jim, do you want to take that one?
Due to the dimensions of the units, in order to get the extra foot offset, we would probably have to, as we put it, jack up the roof a little bit to get that extra foot offset, which may not aesthetically look as good, but and that's the reason why I think we felt that the roof offset to us is at above the third floor. What's more important to us is the proportion of the buildings as you face the street, and that's the reason why we did propose continuous one-story porches to really break the building mass, and basically that's the reason why. I mean, it's just proportionally, it's not going to look as good.
Okay. This is a question. Has there been any? So I understand this is a development, 35 units, 10% low income. So that would be 4 units that would be designated low income.
That's correct.
Has there or would there be any opportunity to talk to the city about public, an opportunity for public to help augment the number of low income units as a percentage of this development?
I'm not totally sure how that'd be structured, but we're certainly open to the conversation.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. And then Mr. Commissioner Ebner had another follow-up question.
Thank you, through the chair. My questions were on the waivers. So for the second waiver, plane changes in the building setback, you're saying that you could not get the 2 foot required for the roof for the multifamily design guidelines because you would be losing bedrooms. Can you explain that?
Yes. Yeah. Basically, the way the rooms are set up right now, we try to maintain for secondary bedrooms about a 10-foot dimension, which is not luxurious. And then the masters vary in depth from about 12 feet or so. So in order to get the increased setback, we would have to impact the master bedroom, which typically 12 is about the minimum size that you would normally do for a master bedroom. Ideally, on a house, they get up to about 15 feet. So these units are not luxuriously oversized, actually.
Okay. But it would not preclude physically being able to get 35 units. Would they not meet a city-required code?
It would still meet city code. It's just not as desirable.
Okay, so you could do it. You're just choosing not to do it.
Choosing is a delicate word. Those bedrooms would not become livable, and at some point the project becomes economically infeasible depending on how many of those bedrooms we lose. I don't know state density bonus code nearly as well as the city attorney. I can't remember if economically viable is included or not.
That good memory. That applies if you're seeking an incentive or concession, and I think the applicant's not seeking an incentive or concession at this juncture. They're seeking waivers only.
Waivers only, right. So the same thing with the building scale. Can you explain the reasoning why that would preclude the project from being physically able to be built?
Yeah, this is really about the floodplain more than anything else. Because we can't have any living area on that first floor, we do need to have sufficient living area to make these attractive homes for purchasers. If the floodplain did not exist, we could likely fit 2 stories, which would be the requirement in some places. But with the floodplain, it truly is infeasible.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was it.
Okay, great. Any other questions for the staff or the applicant?
I have a couple comments about the discussion with regards to I think what the discussion was that the third floor, doesn't step back as it, there we go, as it, is suggested as a guideline. But I do just want to comment, I like the project, and I think it's, there's a lot of good attention to detail. And the fact that the elements, that there's a lot of articulation, not between the second and third floor necessarily, but between, each individual vertical element. And I think that's a really nice, way of handling it, particularly along the elevation that we were just looking at along the main Kingston. So that to me is a critical component. We're not looking at a, 3-story wall. We're looking at a lot of variation in that plane. So I do like that. I do think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly clear, I have to say, on, and I think you asked the question, but I'm not sure it was clear to me still, the issue of the roof height. It's 1 foot instead of 2 foot, and is what we're talking about the change? Where are we talking about? Where is that 2 foot versus 1 foot?
It turns around. This is the change we're talking about right now. That's 1 foot. I believe code says that should be 2 feet.
Got it. Okay.
And to Jim's point, by lifting it up, that changes the dimensions of the bedrooms, which has, in our opinion, negative externalities.
Okay, so I think we've covered the questions. Thank you.
Actually, I do have one other thing.
Oh, we have one other question.
I'm sorry. I guess I didn't know if we were going to move to the issue of the materials at the corner.
Well, if you have questions about them, this is an appropriate time.
Okay, great. Yeah, I do. I think it's a good issue to bring up and to discuss. I know it was brought up that you wanted input on it. And I'm wondering, why would you go to stucco at the corner when all of the other, kind of protruding elements of these like bedroom components are, siding or shingles or some wood product, and then you get to the corner and it's stucco. So I'm wondering what the design concept was there.
Basically, it was based on the style that we used on that on the corner, which when you follow through probably wants to be stucco. But to address everybody's concern, we looked at the material on the building, the unit at the corner, and wrap it around. So we'll probably change it from where it was currently to something that's more of a less stucco, more of a siding or some kind of shingles or something like that. Mm-hmm. So we would have to change all materials. That's the reason why. So we're really open to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it seems to me that it kind of follows the pattern that's being applied to all those other kind of window elements that are coming out if you went with a wood material.
Thank you all.
Okay. So we'll move to final comments on this study session from the commissioners. And we'll start with Commissioner Maldonado.
I like the project because we are adding additional housing in areas in the city that we need housing. My only concern is that for a project in this area, look at what we're trying to build and see is 3 or 4 bedrooms something that the neighborhood needs at the moment. I see that growing families, one or 2 bedrooms are sufficient enough, especially in this type of area where a lot of people are walking to schools and from schools. I do want the applicant to incorporate some open spaces that can be used by the community. I see that your play structure and your large planters of greenery is set in the back by the railroads. I would love for it to be shown somewhere where other community members can be able to use those areas or use that play structure as well. I don't like the idea of bombarding the front facade full of trees and getting rid of half of the sidewalk. If the goal is for people to walk and use transit to different areas, so we're bombarding the area we're surrounding this housing complex with 65 large trees. And reducing the number of green spaces and open spaces that we can use in the front areas of the complex. I like the design. I like the color scheme. I like the structure itself. So, my comments. And I do want to see what's on the issue of traffic, or what the traffic report will be done by, what increased traffic that this will provide for the community as well.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Maldonado. Commissioner Ebnetter?
So are we making our comments now on the 3 bullet points?
Yes.
And then have a closing comments out of these 3 items? Or will we?
I believe right now we should be addressing the 3 items that the Planning Commission is being asked to address.
Okay.
Maybe we can put those up on the screen.
And then we can have our overarching closing comment after these?
Sure.
Perfect, thank you. I like the architectural quite a bit. I think it's very inviting. I was a little concerned when I first saw the drawings that all of the residences were not pointed inward to an inward space, which to me would have really been great because you would then automatically be building community. But I think I understand why you had to choose this route. I would like to see some different components around the highlighted corner, whatever you can come up with. I think overall it's a good design. I am not happy that we can't have some setbacks because it is going to be a pretty large project, especially the 4-story. And but overall, I think it's very attractive. One of my concerns with the layout, though, is where the park is, because I think what you're going to feel there, well, you're never going to get the sun, and that's a problem. It's not going to be an inviting place for people to automatically think to go to. There will be one great advantage of it. It will be shielded from the San Mateo winds, but it won't have any sun whatsoever, which is a shame. The parking, traffic, and vehicular speeds are always an issue. I know that Public Works studies these projects quite extensively. I also know that the traffic through that area is horrendous, especially between 3 and 7. And it's not much, there isn't much that the city can do about it. They're always trying to make improvements, and hopefully this development will bring some relief to that area. Overall, I like the project. I really do want to see as much sustainability issues as can be brought into it, as I spoke earlier. And I would also like to see if there's a possibility to be using local organized labor on a project of this size. I think you would get a high quality product with local labor, and I know that this company has done that program before, and I would be hoping that you would be proceeding with that at this location. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you. Commissioner Mallory?
I too thought that this was a really attractive project. This is one of the nicest ones I've seen since I've been on the commission. I was over at the site looking at the mass of what it would be in relation to the other parts of that area. And staff is looking into the height of the 3-bedroom apartments to the north. And then I was looking at the other single-family homes to the south of the project. And I felt that the design that I'm seeing fits in well into that area. And I don't think that the hotel to the west is going to be adversely affected by the scale or the mass of the building. So I was really pleased with how that was laid out. I agree with everyone's comments on the corner materials. I really liked the fact that these were 3- and 4-bedroom units and that they were family-oriented, and that family-oriented development is going into North Shoreview, because I think that's a really great place for it to go. I do not think there's enough guest parking, and I think, yes, you're going to add some spaces on the street, but I think we're gonna, if you can squeak a couple more in there somewhere, I think that would be a huge benefit. I agree with our applicant where I was watching the traffic in front of Fred's, and that was a constant come up, stop, take off, and leave. So I think it'll be a much quieter corner with a residential area over there rather than the market. And I did drive around and identify the other markets. So there was concern with some of the community members about having somewhere to go for that quick pickup. And there are other markets within walking distance. So I thought that was very positive. If you could add Amazon drop-offs, I think that would be huge. Thanks, Mike. That's a great idea. And then, again, my last comment would be about the fact that there is not a neighborhood school, it's a magnet school. So just having buyers be aware of that, and maybe even checking in with the school district ahead of time and seeing if they have any ideas where the children from that development would attend school. So thank you for designing such a great place.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams.
As I said, I agree with the other comments for the most part as well, but, and I just want to say, yeah, I think it's a great project. I think it can be beneficial to the neighborhood, and it seems like an appropriate location on that corner for a project of that size. With regards to mass and scale, yeah, I do have a little concern about the setback issue. I think that particularly the side, the side that adjoins the R2 lots, the interior side yard, potentially to encroach there, I guess could potentially be problematic in the future. I think currently, currently it's not, the R2 is probably small scale, small massing. But, and the same with on the Monte Diablo side. I guess if there was a way to lessen the encroachment there, I think that would be a good thing to take a look at. But that would require probably some of the units to be reduced in size, probably. And maybe it's that row on the R2 side that would have to be lessened. Take a look at that, in my opinion. I do really like your other projects that you referenced. The one on Humboldt, for instance, that has this similar layout with the alley in between and the garages sort of hidden from the street view and the pedestrian view. So this makes for a really nice pedestrian experience. It is a lot of trees, but I mean, it would create a really wonderful pedestrian way around the site. The open space for children, I guess I like that it's a little bit protected and, not right on the street. There is a schoolyard, I guess, nearby as well. I don't know if there's a park in the neighborhood, a public park. But, there is a public park on Monte Diablo at the other end of the street. I guess where was I going with that? I guess just that, yeah, it is a lot of trees, but I think they can be beneficial, particularly with regards to the fact that it's, we're not stepping back as you go up. You have a fairly, it's a 3-story building along that street. So I think the trees really soften that. I guess I started to say with regards to the open space that the alley actually can be a benefit, I guess, to families in terms of, riding your bikes in and out of the garage and out on your way, that kind of thing. So it's sort of a driveway to play in a little bit, I guess. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but probably in reality. With regards to the building design, I really like what you're doing. I think we all agree that the corner makes sense to look at a different material other than stucco. I do wonder if maybe a little bit of restraint in terms of the variation in the number of materials, perhaps in terms of maintenance, it would be easier if a little bit less. Although I think we all like the, I like the use of the board and batten. I think it's a very attractive project, so that, I think that's a subtlety, I guess, that might want to be looked at. And then with regards to parking and traffic, et cetera, I think I completely agree. I think the 2 guest spaces are pretty minimal particularly because they're 4-bedroom homes. You may have, 2 adult generations, for instance, and, as many as, 3, 4 cars or something. So you do have minimal guest parking, and I think that if you could squeeze in some more as well, I think that would be beneficial. I think that's about it. But yeah, as I said, I like the project a lot.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. I'm already appreciating your informed architectural education informing your comments. I'm an accountant, for the record. Wait, strike that. No, all right. Okay, thank you, staff and the applicant, and thank you also to the public who spoke. And I do believe that this is an outstanding project. This was a specific parcel and area. It was mentioned earlier, but this is a specific parcel that was ID'd as an underutilized site in the general plan housing elements inventory of sites available for new housing development. And so it is really exciting to see this development on this specific space in a neighborhood that a few of the speakers mentioned is they feel is forgotten by the city, and I heard that, and I hope that the council does as well. I am on the project. Before I get to the specific discussion topics, I do think that there is so looking at the design, having visited the site, having seen the site, looking at the design, I think it's very exciting also to see the 60 trees, the 58 additional trees, and the streetscape improvements. And I'll talk about that with relation to the building mass. I also wonder if the city can't look into increasing the greenness of the adjacent streets. You have 35 families. It sounds like a lot of people are talking about they would like to see that area to be more walkable, to be safer, more accommodating to the residents. I see a lot of beauty in the pictures of that block, and it would be great for the city to be able to extend some elements of that throughout the neighborhood. With regard to the building mass and scale, so with regard to the waivers, I actually believe that the building form and mass is appropriate, even with those waivers for that area, because of, some of the items, again, the sidewalk, the planting along the sidewalk, the fact that it's home frontages along the sidewalk, not garages. So when I, went to that area, when I looked at the designs that were presented in the materials, I actually wouldn't have known that it was requiring waivers, without actually reading the factual data sheet. So I thought it was well designed, and I do feel like it is a fine layout and fit in that area. For the building design itself and the variety of siding materials, the architectural style, I thought that it was very classic looking, a little bit different from some of the other projects that we've seen over the last year, which I appreciate. And I know Commissioner Mallory mentioned the same thing. Like I mentioned, I just wonder if surrounding streets wouldn't benefit from additional tree planting also. And I do think that, I think that there was some, when I was looking at the materials, advanced materials, it seemed to me like everything was conforming with the pedestrian master plan and the sidewalk standards, but it sounded like maybe there was some of the sidewalks were more narrow than required. So I'm unclear on that, but I'm supportive of that, the design. I'm supportive of the building mass and scale. With regard to the parking, I think a couple of commissioners have mentioned that this is 35 units of 4-bedroom and 3-bedroom units, having 2 visitor spots. Even with the incremental 17 street spots that are being created, which is actually a very positive element of this pre-application, I am concerned about that. That seems unusual to me. The 35 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom units in a very small footprint, I would encourage the developer to think about accommodation for a high volume of deliveries of, groceries, Amazon, things like that. Especially given the fact that there are 2 markets that are within an 1/8 of a mile, but my understanding is they're pretty small. There's pretty small units or markets. So I'm just wondering what that means for the actual practical use of those families and how they get supplies and such. Just something to think about. With regard to the parking study, I feel that sometimes we get parking studies that are somewhat vanilla. They just have, one observation on one point in time, not multiple. And I think that there are a lot of concerns that neighborhood residents have raised. So I would encourage the city, the staff, to have a robust traffic study around this development that contemplates improvements to the area to make it more walkable, to make it safer for that neighborhood and the people around it. I think that's something that has come up in the public comments, in the written comments, and I'm certain that's been mentioned before also. And, so that's my feedback on the project. But again, I do compliment the applicant. I think it's a very, very positive project. Commissioner Abner, did you have any other comments that you wanted to add?
I do not have any other comments. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. I thought you did.
I did, but they've been covered.
Excellent. Okay, so I believe Do any other comments from any other commissioners? Okay, I think that concludes that item. Thank you. Any communications, announcements?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to, should I have? I'm sorry. It's closed now. Okay. I'm still getting the hang of it. I mean, I don't want to overdo it. All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Again, I wanted to welcome Commissioner Williams, and I think your background as an architect will be very valuable to the commission, so welcome. And just some upcoming meetings for you guys. Well, actually, the next one, which is the 19th, will be a city council meeting. That is for the general plan. They're going to be talking about the identification of study areas for the general plan. And then on August 27th, which is the next Planning Commission meeting, you guys will be reviewing the UFIS project as a study session, and that's going to be the underground flow equalization system. And then there are 2 meetings in September. The first one is going to be the Hayward Park Station project study session, and then the second one will be the public hearing for the UFIS project.
Which is the second one?
The second meeting in September will be the public hearing for the UFIS, but the next meeting on August 27th is a study session for the UFIS.
Are you asking what UFIS is? Are you asking? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're a month apart.
I can't remember what it stands for.
Underground flow equalization system. Say that 10 times fast. Okay. Yep, so that's all for us.
Okay,
Thank
excellent.
you.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, a meeting is adjourned.